Today, I'm going to be exploring this laptop, which despite the way it looks is not an old MacBook Air, and I'm going to be repairing it and putting Pop! OS on here. So let's just go ahead and check it out. Alright, so I'm here with the Gigabyte U2442, and the way I ended up with this laptop is basically at my old job, I was doing IT, and we had a bunch of old computers that we had to get rid of. And this was one of them. This came out in 2012. I had never even heard of this computer, but I saw it and I was like, well, this is kind of a cool looking computer. And it does remind me a lot of the original MacBook Air. But of course, the build quality is not as good as the MacBook Air, though, but has held up very well. So this did come out in 2012. Let's just go over the specs really quick. This has a 3rd generation Core i5-3120. It has 8 gigs of DDR3 RAM. It has a 14-inch HD display. Now this isn't even 1080p. This is 1600 by 900, so it's like in between 720 and 1080. But you know what? It's a 14-inch screen, so it's not that huge. It's fine. The bigger issue is that this is a TN panel, so the colors and stuff kind of suck. But again, it was an old laptop. It was 2012, so we'll just have to let certain things slide about it. This actually came with an M.2 SATA SSD. It was only 128 gigs, and then it had an extra spinning hard drive for mass storage. So this was pretty ahead of its time. This also had Bluetooth 4.0. Unfortunately, it doesn't have dual band Wi-Fi, so we're stuck with 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi. So the Wi-Fi module does kind of suck. That's the only thing that kind of sucks about this computer, but a lot of it still holds up well today. The other thing that's odd about this notebook is it does have dedicated graphics, an NVIDIA GT640, which is a 2 gig mobile card, which after reading the reviews, even at the time, wasn't that great for gaming, but dedicated graphics is better than just having integrated graphics. So it's kind of cool that this notebook had it. Now this was sold as an Ultrabook at the time. Given the size now, I'd say it's more like a regular size laptop. There are a lot of conveniences that it has to be such an old laptop. On this side, it has an HDMI port, which is super convenient. The barrel connector, of course, for charging, 2 USB 3.0 ports, and an SD card slot. And then on this side, it has an Ethernet, VGA, 2 USB 2.0 ports, and then it has a separate microphone and headphone jack. As far as versatility, this could be a great productivity laptop even today. Like if you just need something to get stuff done, like writing or whatever, this could still be a great laptop, which is why I was interested in fixing it. But there were some issues. So the big thing was the battery was completely dead, and it was actually swollen to the point where I had to go ahead and remove it before this video was done. So the battery was already taken out before I shot this video. Also, when I booted into Windows, because this did still have Windows 8 on it, it kept freezing. And originally I thought it was a spinning drive, because typically those die first, especially in laptops, because they're not really made to get bumped around and moved a lot. So I took the spinning drive out first, and it still kept freezing after that, which told me it was the M.2 drive. So I'm actually replacing both of those today, and I'm not replacing it with another M.2 drive. The main reason is this was a slower M.2 drive, so there really wasn't an advantage other than form factor of having it versus having a SATA drive. So I'm just replacing it with a SATA drive. It was a lot cheaper. I just got a 240 gig drive that was $25 in 8801. And then the battery was around 40 bucks. I couldn't find a genuine battery, so I got an off-brand one off of Amazon that was around $38. And also the particular battery I bought came with tools to open the laptop. So if you do happen to buy this battery, open the battery first. Don't be like me and then open the battery once you get the laptop open, because it actually would have saved a lot of headache. It comes with a screwdriver and like a little pick to pry open the laptop. But anyway, let's just hop into the repair section of the video. So of course, you're gonna start by flipping the laptop over. The first thing you wanna do is take off the RAM door. So there's gonna be one screw there that you take out. There are also gonna be these little rubber nubs that cover the keyboard screws. So you'll see like these little keyboard labels around the laptop. There's 6 of them. You just need like a screwdriver or a little tool to pry them out, and then the screw will be under there. And then after that, you just go ahead and take all the other screws out. So there's nothing really too tricky about unscrewing this laptop. You just want to make sure that you remember or mark somehow where the screws go. Like usually I'll draw like a diagram of the back of the laptop, and I'll put the screws on the diagram that match where the laptop is. In this case, I've already taken this laptop apart before, so I wasn't too concerned about it. Also, especially because we're dealing with the battery. You should definitely be wearing an electrostatic wristband. I wasn't in this video because, to be honest, I've done this a bunch of times, so I wasn't that worried about it, and it's my laptop, and it was free, so I wasn't worried about messing it up. I definitely recommend wearing a wrist strap or grounding yourself in some way if you're planning on taking this apart. Inside of the laptop, at the bottom is where both your SATA drive and your battery is gonna go. So there's 4 screws all together that hold the battery in. There's gonna be 2 small screws, one on the motherboard and one on the bottom of the case you need to take out for the battery. The other 2 screws for the battery are actually part of the case, so once you screw the case back in, that also secures the battery a little bit more. And then there's just one connector that you pull out to take the battery out. So I couldn't show that in the video because I didn't capture it, but I just kind of wanted to explain it. The SATA drive, you just pull the connector. It's just one big connector. You pull it out of the existing drive. And I did the drive first because it's better to go ahead and replace any components or remove anything while the battery is disconnected. So I did the SATA drive first. I just plugged that in to the connector. And then I went ahead and removed the old M.2 SSD, which is just held in by 1 screw. It just pops up and then you just pull it out. And then I went ahead and installed the new battery. Installing the battery is pretty simple. It's just a 1 white connector and you slide it in onto the motherboard slot, and then you place it in and you just make sure that the screw holes are lined up. At this point, you would go ahead and put your 2 screws back in, and then you just put your back plate back on and screw everything back together. That's pretty much it. I've been using this for about a week now. I've already installed Pop! OS. I haven't had any of the issues with it freezing, and surprisingly, Pop! OS has been a very robust operating system. Now, I could have gone with Windows because this actually had Windows 8 Pro on it, so I could have upgraded it to Windows 10 Pro, but Windows is in the process of being discontinued, and this hardware doesn't support Windows 11. So I wanted to future-proof this laptop. Plus, I've been trying to get into Linux for years now, and I keep making the excuses. So just having a laptop that's running Linux that'll allow me to try different distros will be great. To give a quick overview of my thoughts on Pop! OS, it's pretty cool. One thing I like is how customizable it is. The first thing I did was install user themes. I also installed, I think it was like a GNOME extension, so I could get the tweak tool. And basically that just allows you to go in and tweak your user themes. So this is actually a custom theme that I downloaded. This is called Sunrise Dark. I'm actually going to open the file system or the file explorer, and that way when I change it, so this is like the default Pop! OS Dark theme that I just switched it to, which is in itself is pretty cool, but I just like how that Sunrise Dark just gives me a little extra pop of color. But there's a bunch of themes that you can choose from, so you don't really have to be limited to just this. You can also change the icons. This particular theme pack didn't come with icons, or at least I didn't download them. I should check to see if they do have icons, but anyway, this is still the default pop icons, but you know, you can switch the icons just that easily, and they'll kind of give your whole system a different look. That's one thing that's kind of cool about Pop! OS, and this was fairly easy to do. Once you have the user themes and that GNOME extension installed, all you gotta do is download whatever theme and then pop it in your .themes folder. If you don't see it, then all you gotta do is hit Control-H to show hidden folders. If you don't have it, then all you gotta do is just create a new folder and name it .themes, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, it's super easy. Another thing I wanted to mention, this is actually not how the dock is by default. I'm actually just gonna open the settings really quick. So even without installing the user themes and the tweaks, I can just go into like desktop and then dock, and that gives you a bunch of customization options. So by default, the docks stretch all the way to the end, and that's always visible. It's a little bit closer to the Windows 11 look, in my opinion, where you have your launcher where you can search for stuff, and then you have your workspaces icon, kind of like your switcher, where you can switch between desktops and switch between apps really easily. And then you just have your applications, which is close to like the start bar. So this kind of reminds me a lot of Windows 11, but it's actually a lot smoother. Yeah, I'm gonna set it back to what I had before because I don't like my dock to be extended to the edges, and I also don't like my dock to always be visible. Out of the gate, it gives you a lot of customization options. It has a built-in dark theme. So even without messing with any of the custom themes, you still have a lot more customization options as far as the look than you do on Windows out of the box. The one thing I really applaud Pop! OS for, just how easy it is to install a lot of programs like you might need. For instance, Steam, I literally just went to the site and downloaded it, and it installs just like a Windows program. Same thing with Chrome. I was able to just grab that, but I actually needed OBS from this video, and that's where things get a little bit hairy. Like, what's on the screen is not difficult. It's just if you're talking to a grandma and she's like, I want to install OBS because I want to record some cooking videos or something. I don't know what grandma's doing, but maybe she's streaming on Twitch or whatever. If I had to walk grandma through this, I'm just throwing the computer away at that point, because grandma is not going to do this. Most of my friends are not going to do this. And that's the small problem that you run into with Linux. No matter how dumbed down it is, you're still going to run into stuff like this, depending on what programs you need. I remember in that last laptop video where I repaired the laptop for a friend because she was giving it to this person that used to walk her dog. And I'm like, I don't know what kind of user she is. She only pretty much was using a tablet before. So I didn't want to give her anything that I wasn't too familiar with. And I have played around with Linux before, and I was like, I just don't think it would be a good idea, even though I saw people suggested Pop! OS because of how well it runs on old hardware. And that is true. Like, this runs great on this hardware, but I'm fine with it for myself. I just don't know if I'm still at that point where I could recommend it to grandma. Now, I could probably set it up in such a way that it would be customized to her. But if she ever wanted to install something else that's not one of the supported apps, then it's gonna be a pain. But the other thing that is good about this is they do have the Pop Shop. I actually just installed GIMP from here. It's an open source photo editing software that's really powerful. If you don't want to use Photoshop, it's actually on Windows and Mac as well. I've been using it for a long time. Since the very first time I used Linux, which was over 10 years ago at this point, GIMP was one of the things that I kept using. GIMP is awesome. If I want to just go back here to the main screen, right here you got Steam. You can install Slack, Spotify. There's a lot of things that they have up here that people might want, like Signal, but there's certain things that aren't going to be up here. Like, for instance, if you want like Facebook Messenger, there's an alternative solution that looks a lot like Facebook Messenger, but I think for the average user, they're going to be like, that's not Facebook. Or they might be like, okay, that is Facebook because the icon looks the same. I don't know, but I probably would get a phone call if it was somebody's grandma and be like, hey, I'm trying to do my Facebook Messenger, but I don't see it up here. So it's just one of those things where like not everything's gonna be the same, and that's gonna probably throw off somebody who's not as tech savvy. Now, the one thing I wanna talk about is gaming. This is one of those things where you might get frustrated because it's Linux. I really wanted to stream games because I did try playing some games up here, and it's not because of Linux, but the graphics up here aren't the strongest. You can actually click on the little penguin icon to show games that only run Linux, and there's actually quite a few games in my collection that are up here. The main thing I wanted to do was stream from my other computer while I have this laptop hooked up to my OLED in my bedroom. I immediately ran into two issues. For one, the streaming didn't work. Then two, I forgot that this is an old Wi-Fi chip that's not even dual band, so yeah, it wasn't the best experience. But what I found out was basically you can't stream games if you're using dedicated graphics. If you click on these settings in the upper right with the Wi-Fi sound icon and all that, and you go to here, like your battery icon, that's gonna give you your power settings. So I'm on the NVIDIA version of Pop! OS. So you select integrated graphics, it has to restart for it to take effect. You can also switch to NVIDIA graphics, hybrid, or compute graphics. And then you can also do high performance, so you can, emphasize if you want battery life or not. I had to learn that very quickly. But yeah, that's one of those things that's kind of frustrating when you run into it. It took me a while to figure that out. I was just like, why is this not working? It doesn't make any sense. You wouldn't have that issue on Windows, but I also understand that a lot of this hardware is made by a dedicated community. They're not like Microsoft or Apple that have billions of dollars to develop the software. And for what it is, it's very impressive, especially to be something that you can just get for free. But after I got past that barrier, I found out that I couldn't really do any streaming on this laptop anyway, unless I have an Ethernet connection, just because this wireless adapter is so bad. Now, as far as just natively running games up here, there are quite a few games that just work out of the box on Pop! OS. It's actually pretty impressive. This hardware is not really gonna run anything that's too new. I actually ran Tomb Raider up here before, and no matter what settings I chose, even on low, I could not break more than like an average of around 20 frames per second. But something like Hypnospace Outlaw, this would be a great game to play on a laptop like this. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and just restart this laptop so I can switch over to the NVIDIA graphics, and we can have a look at that for a little bit. Oh, and before I restart, let me do this. If you want an idea of how the webcam and mic is up here, I mean, look, this was 10 years ago. It exists. I can say it definitely exists. I stopped banging my hand on here because I'm probably making the audio worse. But yeah, it's good. They tried. Okay, let's restart. So it actually takes quite a while for it to switch over to the other graphics settings. It's been about a minute. It's still preparing to switch to NVIDIA graphics. So it's not something that's like super convenient that you probably want to do all the time. I have to look into this. Maybe there's already a better solution for this, but yeah, this is the only thing that I found so far. And there we go. Restart and switch. Okay, now we're back in Steam, and then I can just hit play. Let's see how well this works. I've actually not tried this game on this notebook yet, so. So Hypnospace runs just fine. There's probably a lot of indie games you can play up here. There was a resolution issue with Hypnospace, but it might just be because this game doesn't support that resolution. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into it. But something like that I can really just run in window mode and then kind of play that game while I'm doing other stuff on the computer. Oh look, the mic texted out 3-year anniversary live stream. Let's see if that plays. I'm actually gonna mute this for right now. But let's say if I want to move this over here to a little side window, it kind of does the snap thing. It doesn't give you the option to pick another window like in Windows, so you'll have to just manually drag the window to the other side to resize it. So if I wanted to do this, I don't know, while recording on OBS, and then maybe I'll play some Hypnospace Outlaw again. Go ahead and load that up. Playing the game while I got another web browser just to browse stuff, and I got another video playing in the background. Now realistically, I wouldn't have it like this. I would probably resize the window so they make sense. But yeah, it's still a pretty capable laptop, especially with Pop! OS on it. It kind of just zooms through everything because it's so lightweight. The one thing I actually haven't talked about that much is the actual hardware itself. So I went back and looked at an old review for this computer. And one of the things I found was they said the keyboard was bad. But the funny thing is, I think laptop keyboards are so bad now that this is actually like a standard keyboard. Like this is still close to like the current MacBook keyboard. It's a little bit mushier. It's not as clicky. But then again, this is also 10 years old. So it could have been a little bit more clicky on launch. I don't know. But there's plenty of keyboard shortcuts with the function keys. The trackpad is ridiculously small and it's textured, which was marked as being a good thing at the time. And I actually hate it. Like I feel like it's a lot more resistance to the trackpad. And yeah, it actually makes it a little bit more difficult to use. And of course, because it's old, you actually have the big button to click on stuff. Yay, click button. Remember buttons on trackpads? Remember those? It has those. But even with all that, it's still fine. It's still a very usable laptop by today's standards. And with Pop! OS, like I said, this thing just kind of soars through everything. The battery life is garbage because it's a laptop from that time, so don't expect to get more than like an hour or so out of here. But I will say that the hour is pretty even. Like even when I push it, it still gets around the same battery life as when I'm web browsing. So it was just how battery life was around the time that this laptop came out. So yeah, that's just in general if you're buying like an old laptop, battery life wasn't exceptional back then. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about this laptop and my Pop! OS experience so far. It's been pretty fun. I'll probably do a follow-up video in maybe like 6 months because who knows if I'll even be running the same distro by then. Maybe I'll try some other distros to see how they are. But so far, I like Linux. There's a small hiccups that you're still going to run into. I think having your expectations in check and having patience really helps a lot. And it's cool. Like if you can find like an old laptop like this that's maybe a junker, or I don't know, at a thrift store or something, and you want to kind of do something like this, it's kind of a cheap way just to have an extra computer for maybe like productivity or web browsing or whatever, or even game streaming like I'm planning on doing once I figure out a way to get Ethernet to this laptop in the bedroom. But that's all I got for you today. If you enjoyed this video, then make sure to tell a friend, tell a coworker, like, share, and subscribe. And always do at least 2 things at the same time. Hit the bell notification to get notified when I drop a video. Peace.